All right. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the Beans Route Tech webinar series. I'm Pam, and I'm glad that you're here. I hope everybody can hear me okay. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free, as with all the webinars, just type them in the Q&A section or in the chat box, and we will make sure that we address them at the end of the presentation. Now, in our previous webinars about recruiting, we have discussed how to supercharge your hiring process. We've discussed lead generation, and we've also recently discussed the new First Advantage integration into the Beans Route platform. Today, we want to address some of the common mistakes that contractors make during the hiring process and how you can avoid them. Shivam Shah from Beans Recruiting is with me today. Hey, Shivam.
How's it going, Pam?
Oh, it's going great. And Shivam and I are just going to talk to you all about some stories. Some of them may sound like horror stories, but it's a lot of mistakes that contractors, myself included, have made in the past when it comes to hiring candidates. So Shivam, why don't you start and give us some examples that I'm sure you have lots of some of the mistakes that contractors have made in the past.
Oh God, absolutely. No, thank you so much, Pam. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So yeah, we at Beans Recruiting, over the last year have processed over 180,000 candidates for hundreds of contractors that we've been recruiting for. We're currently actively recruiting for over 100 FedEx P&D contractors and a lot of line haul contractors as well. And over the last couple of years, as we interact with all contractors of every size, every type, varying levels of experience, we have seen some mistakes just repeat one after the other. And that's why, when Pam and I were discussing what we wanted to talk about in the next webinar, I was like, these are common sense problems that exist too often. And maybe we could kind of speak to them, speak from our perspective, what we're seeing and how we can fix them. So let me start with the story. So we had a contractor out of Detroit who started working with us in January this year. He called me up early January, which is generally a lull time for us. And he was like, hey, Shivam, I need 15 drivers. And he started right off super, he was super responsive to all our communication. He was recruiting super aggressively. We worked with him, got him plenty of candidates over Jan, Feb, and March. In early April, he called me one day saying, Shivam, we need to stop this right away. And I was obviously surprised. I was like, hey, we're doing a great job for you. What's up? And he told me that FedEx terminated his contract, unfortunately. And, as we see that every year around, Q2, right, where we see a handful of our clients get terminated, unfortunately, by FedEx. And what upon further conversation with him, what I found out was he had stumbled, like many contractors, he had stumbled around peak, where he thought he had enough people, a couple people left, and that kind of just triggered this spiral, this downward spiral that we've seen all too often. And as a result, for almost 40 days, he wasn't able to service a part of his CSA. And from my experience, that will not always result in termination, but that, along with other probably incidents, resulted in him unfortunately being terminated. And that goes to what we keep telling contractors all the time. I know it's self-serving, but always keep hiring, always keep recruiting. You cannot stop. We all know that recruiting is a 14 to 15 day funnel at the very minimum. And that's when you know exactly what you're doing. And that's when you know exactly how to do it. Right. And we've seen this on and on that if you don't have enough people, you're unable to enforce the culture, you're unable to enforce safety standards, you're unable to enforce service standards. The drivers often tend to start running the business rather than you running the drivers.
And that'll get you an OTC. Letting the drivers run your business.
Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen that too often. And, us as recruiters, we find that solution fairly simple.
Mhm.
You know, if you're continuously recruiting, if you've got a pipeline of candidates coming in, you're able to be extremely strict. You're able to have a no nonsense policy. You're able to keep removing the bottom 10% of your drivers every month. And that creates a culture of performance at your
Right.
entity.
Right.
And that goes a long way.
It also takes
You
a
know,
lot of the stress off of your, I'm sorry, Shivam. It takes a lot of
go,
stress
go
off of
on.
your drivers. Takes a lot of stress
Absolutely.
off the drivers.
It takes stress off your drivers. It takes stress out of the BCs. It takes stress off the owners. And
Mhm.
you know what? You know, I keep hearing that, you know, currently FedEx contractors with inflation are getting squeezed. It also opens up the opportunity of contingency, which we all know is lucrative. We have a lot of clients who run contingency operations within state and out of state, and they could only get there because they had excess drivers.
Right.
So, you know, basically, apart from always keep recruiting, we see three common mistakes that I think every FedEx contractor should introspect, should understand if they're committing the same mistakes, and course correct. So, you know, the first one is professional expectations. I understand there's an old saying that we should expect the candidates to behave the way we behave. And I understand the school of thought that comes from, but I think we as recruiters and contractors need to understand that drivers don't come from the same situation, the same background as we often come to. They're very often not coming from the most stable settings.
Mhm.
They might be trying to do their best, but their best might not be good enough very often. But just expanding on that, we see this very frequently where client says, "Hey, I called that guy 3 times. He didn't pick up my phone. I'm not going to bother with him if he can't call me back." But we don't realize that these people are probably at a job where they're not allowed their cell phone in their pockets.
Mhm.
They're working 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours. They're just not able to get back to you. And, at the end of the day, they've probably got half a dozen, missed calls, and they're not going to bother. So,
Right.
I tell contractors that, hey, did you leave a voicemail? Did you drop a text? Did you send an email? I understand that sometimes, we feel like if they want a job bad enough, they should be putting in the effort. And that may be true. But there's enough examples I can give where, the candidate he wants the job. He just doesn't have the luxury to be by his phone answering the call when you call him. And that's something that's a perspective that we need to understand. I hear a lot.
I was one of those contractors that used to do that, Shivam. It's like, oh, you call them once, they don't answer, they don't call you back, but you have to. So you're basically saying you can't just drop one hat in the bucket. You have to make sure that you're covering all your bases, and you might have to be really consistent with these people because, sometimes, again, it could be someone who's 21 or 22, 23. These kids don't show up for interviews in a jacket and a tie anymore. They're coming in sneakers and a t-shirt. It's a blue collar job. Now, I'm not saying that should be reflected, that you shouldn't judge them by that. That should
Absolutely.
not be their
This
professional.
saying, don't judge a book by its cover. It's never been truer in this space. I've got feedback from contractors very often saying, "Hey, that guy, he didn't smell right. I don't think he showered." I'm like, "Hey,
That's a problem. That's a problem.
I respect that. I respect having higher standards, and I respect that we want to build good culture. But that being said, we have to understand what the driver's job is, what we expect from him, and we have to understand where he's coming from. That's all I'm saying. I'm asking the contractor to kind of just put themselves in their shoes and put that lens on. I'm not asking anyone to drop standards. I'm just asking us to be realistic, and empathize a little bit more. The second thing I keep hearing is a lot of contractors don't preemptively reach out to candidates, or our process tells us that the moment they're eligible on First Advantage, we send out an email. Since we're integrated with First Advantage, we send out automated emails to our clients saying, "Hey, this person's eligible." A lot of contractors, the first thing they do is they'll log into First Advantage, they'll check whether he's done his drug test or not. And they're like, hey, if he's not bothered to do his drug test, I'm not calling him for a road test. And I'm going to wait for that. If he wants this job bad enough, he's going to get his drug test done. They might call him up, they might just remind him to get the drug test done. But I feel that is fairly unfair on our part as a contractor. And I know, Pam, I know you back in the day had that requirement as well, but this is why I feel it's unfair. A lot of these people, again, like I said, are working full-time jobs. They're hourly jobs. They're not going to get paid time off. If you expect them to take 3, 4, 5 hours a day out of for a drug test for a job they don't know they have, again, I feel like that might be unfair in terms of the expectations that we're setting for the candidate. Good point. A lot of candidates get their drug test done if they've got a free, weekend, if they've got some time, if they're currently not employed. That being said, the candidates that do not get a drug test done preemptively are not. I would highly implore that they not be put into a bucket, assuming they're not interested or they're not the right fit because they haven't done that step. So we've seen good candidates being passed over because of that, who then have reapplied for another contractor and have worked out just fine. Yep. So we get a lot of feedback from the candidates and the contractors, and all of what I'm saying is just assimilation of feedback and understanding both sides. In this labor market, where the way things are and the way they continue to be, we just do not have the privilege of passing on candidates who haven't gotten a preemptive drug test done and waiting for them to finish that, passing that before calling for a road test. We're elongating the recruiting process by another 7 to 8 days. Wow. And I just don't think that is practical.
Right. Well, like you said, you might pass up on a candidate who would have been great, but you'll never know because somebody else snatched him up out of the pipeline just because you didn't want to, give him a little bit or her a little bit more time to do the drug test. Is there another way that you think you can circumvent that and keep the hiring process going until they get the drug test? Because I know some people will put the brakes on the hiring process until they've done the drug test. Because that's a make or break with FedEx. If you don't pass, you can't get in a truck.
So this is my 2 cents, right? So, when we recruit for candidates, we make it amply clear that a drug test is essential, and we tell them what substances they're going to be tested for. Okay. And those who are not going to pass are not even going to, most of them are not going to bother filling out First Advantage. That being said, there are a fair share of people who think they can, outsmart the system, and they'll still waste everyone's time and eventually fail in the drug test. But I believe it's a chance worth taking. What I believe is the moment they're eligible in First Advantage, you should call them in for a road test. The contractor or the hiring manager should conduct the road test, conduct a 5-10 minute face-to-face interaction. If you get the right feeling, if you think you want to go ahead with a candidate, if he's not done his drug test already, just give him the DOT medical paperwork and send him to the closest facility to get both of his things done. And trust me when I tell you this, if someone comes in for a road test and if he's had the time to interact with you face-to-face, and if he knows that this job is his, if he finishes these last 2 steps, he'll be significantly motivated to get it done that very day. And our suggestion is always just, if his background is clean, just call him in for a road test. And if you want to go ahead, then just send him to the closest center, and you will see significantly better conversions.
Agreed. And I think that the point that you touched on, that 5 or 10 minute or even longer face-to-face interview with that candidate will tell you so much about them. I mean, you don't know. Like one time I had a lady who had to reschedule our interview like 2 or 3 times. And when she came into the office, I found out that she had a sick mother, and then she was trying to get daycare for her child and things like that. And the old Pam would have been like, okay, after the first time you blow me off, that's it. No second chances, because this industry is so hard. And you figure if you're going to blow me off for a job interview that, you're searching for a job, not me. What happens when I have a route scheduled for you? So, I mean, I can see both sides of the coin, Shivam, like, okay, how much should we give before we
I
say,
agree.
you know,
So like I'm saying,
chance on you.
I'm not asking a contractor to lower their standards. I'm not asking that. I'm just asking the contractor to add a little bit of empathy and understand where the candidate is coming from and give him a second chance. Obviously, 2-3 reschedules, yeah, that would be a strike off from my end as well. But definitely give them a shot. And I'll speak to that more. So, last year we'd recruited a candidate who I'd personally spoken with, for I think it was for a Florida location. And like we often do, if we get the start date, we call them the day before and just check in with them, make sure that they're all set for, if they need any details or anything like that. And I called him, afternoon the day before he was supposed to join, and he was like, "Hey, Shivam, I don't think I'm going to be able to join." I was like, "What happened?" He's like, "I don't have shoes. My shoes tore up last week and I don't have money to buy shoes and I can't do this job without shoes." And I was like, just borrow money and get shoes. And he's like, "I've tried. I can't work. I'm going to try to get some money, get the shoes, and then I'm going to see if I can join another day." I cash apped him $20, 25 something to buy, a pair of shoes. And that guy, he bought the shoes. He turned up the next day. I called a week later to the contractor just to check in on him because I'd made an investment in him. And, contractor was fairly happy. It was obviously early days, but, the candidate worked out fine. The candidate's in touch with me. He paid me back like 2 months later.
Okay.
And now think about this from a contractor's perspective. Obviously, you're not going to give advances to a potential employee before he joins. But if someone doesn't show up and gives you that excuse, your reflex reaction is going to be like, "No, this is bullshit. This is not worth it.
Right.
I'm not going to waste my time with this candidate. I'll move on."
Right.
And what I'm trying to tell you, again, without lowering your standards, if you add that perspective from a candidate's point, you may be more open to give people a second chance.
Right.
The third thing, which is again super common as a mistake, which I see, is communication. The recruiting process, is super fast in a way because you're working with numbers. You don't get to spend an hour or 2 hours or 3. You don't get to have multiple rounds of interviews like it is for white collar jobs. You're spending maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes on the phone, and 10, 15, 20 minutes on a road test. And that's about it. And most candidates are applying for half a dozen to 2 dozen jobs as is. And the biggest reason for attrition is communication. The biggest reason for people not joining on day 0 is because they somehow don't feel confident that job was for them. So they never stopped looking between when you interviewed them and when they had the join date, they were still applying.
That's so funny.
What I've seen.
I'm sorry, Shivam. I used to actually ask people when they came into the office, I used to ask them how many jobs, and I would say, "Hey, I hope you don't mind me asking, but, how many other jobs have you applied for?" Because what had happened to me multiple times was I would get a driver, process them, hire them, put them in the seat, have them on the schedule, everything done. They're doing great. And then somebody called because they had a job that had benefits and 401k. I'm not mad at them. I can't fault them, but maybe if I had known in the interim that you had applied for multiple jobs, I didn't ask them where they had applied, but if I had known that there was something else in the pipeline that could have come up and taken them away from me, maybe I wouldn't have put them in a full route. Maybe they could have been a cover driver or, do overflow or something like that. So that's funny that you said that because it happens.
Yeah. So every job, space like Indeed, for example, is incentivized to get a candidate to apply to multiple people. They get paid per candidate applying per individual job. So, they're obviously designed to get people to apply for half a dozen to 2 dozen jobs, give or take. So that's going to happen.
Right.
But what do you do to get, FedEx contractors offer a good job, a stable job with good pay for someone who's coming with probably no educational qualifications or any trade skill. So we have to understand that we have a compelling offer. Most FedEx contractors are paying $45,000, $55,000 a year, and that's good hard work but good pay.
For a 24.
However, however, the problem happens when they don't believe that the job is real very often, where they're not confident. And the reason I've seen that, because we recruit for people outside FedEx as well, what we see is overwhelmingly FedEx contractors are just poor at paperwork for some reason. I understand attrition is insane in this industry, but a simple offer letter, right? A simple offer letter in your company's letterhead, which states the start date, it states the pay, it states the benefits, it just has a summary of what you're committing. That piece of paper, while it may not seem much to a contractor, because your word might be a bond, for the candidate who doesn't know you, for the candidate who might have been cheated by another employer in the past, that piece of paper is extremely valuable, and you will be surprised at the improvement of people turning up on day zero if they have that offer letter from you. And that will save you a lot of trouble down the road. That will save you a lot of trouble with people confused or pissed off when they get their first paycheck, thinking they were gonna get $1,000 a week, but you paid them $750. So that'll solve those problems as well. Absolutely. But it'll solve your immediate problem with recruiting. And that I cannot overstate that enough. If anyone on this webinar wants more information, we have a new hire packet that we give out to a lot of our clients who ask. We're happy to share that. Just email us at fxgrecruiting@beans.ai, and we're happy to share that with you. But paperwork is important, and I just don't know why we don't do enough of it. Even if it's not a statutory requirement, I highly, highly, highly encourage every FedEx contractor to do so. Get a DocuSign account. It takes all of 30 seconds to send them an offer letter. It's not a lot of time commitment, but it goes a long way.
I think most contractors should have a new hire packet, because there's a lot of tax documents that new hires have to fill out, but adding in an offer letter or at least an explanation of benefits in there is crucial. It's crucial.
New hire packets, new hire packets are given on day zero. The offer letter is given at the day of the interview. Stacy, the email address is fxgrecruiting@beans.ai, and Pam will obviously type it into the chat for you. So guys, these, again, everything I'm saying is something that we've seen over and over again, by extremely experienced, extremely intelligent contractors of varying sizes. I have seen these mistakes done by contractors who got 200 routes, and I've seen them with obviously a contractor who's in a truck himself with 6 routes. It doesn't mean the contractor doesn't care. It doesn't mean the contractor's less intelligent. It's just when you're in this beast called FedEx, sometimes it's very easy to lose perspective. It's very easy to lose sight of these small things, but they go a long way in our experience.
Absolutely, they do. And so the real takeaways are: try not to lose a candidate because you're not willing to cut them some slack because they didn't answer your first phone call, correct? Give them some time, and remember that the hiring process does take at least 14 days. Am I wrong? From start to finish, to get them up and running. It can be an extensive process as far as time, and we all know how First Advantage works doing background checks, and the MVRs, depending on what state you're checking, it could take longer than 14 days. And so let me get some clarification, Shivam. Anonymous attendee asked, give the offer letter as soon as I get off the phone or before the drug screen. So just go over that again. I don't think it should be, well, you tell me. What
So,
do you say?
so firstly, offer letters in most states are not binding. Let me make that clear. And especially in the news today, you're seeing Fortune 500 companies rescind offer letters. And the nature of an offer letter states that it's not binding, and you should obviously make sure your format is correct. That being said, I don't suggest giving an offer letter before the road test, because that's when you're face-to-face interacting with someone, unless you're super confident in them over a phone call. I suggest wait.
The drug test.
So yeah, I mean, again, some people get their drug test before the road test, some after. The offer letter can be contingent on a successful drug test.
Yep.
And a successful background if the background hasn't come back then. That is the standard format, that, hey, if you pass these two things, you're hired.
Right.
But I do suggest to give an offer letter after you physically had a chance to meet them.
Right. A one-on-one, because you never know. It could be, and I mean, I know we can't discriminate, and I've hired some people that were elderly. I hired a retired mailman before, and he was great. He was really a great driver. I mean, so you can't judge on that. I mean, I've hired people that were, you wouldn't see them in the grocery store and think they'd be a great FedEx driver, but they were great for me. And my standards.
Let me tell you something. The resume, which is the only piece of paper that we have to judge a candidate, except for us seeing him in person, the resume as a concept is 450 years old. It's created by Leonardo da Vinci. It has not evolved since then. It was not meant for the blue collar industry. It was meant for computer science or architects or MBAs. So I honestly keep extremely low weightage on the resume. It tells you a couple of things. It tells you if someone's switched to 20 jobs. It tells you if someone's got relevant job experience. But beyond that, I would not make a hiring decision just based on a resume. While I would not reject the candidate based on the resume, I would definitely also not hire someone solely based on the resume. So please take resumes with a massive grain of salt.
Yeah, that's good advice. So along with the resume, hit or miss, hire or don't hire, the unreal expectations in this industry for a candidate. Talk about that.
So let me take a step back, right? So I hear this a lot, especially in the last couple of weeks, as our news channels keep talking about an impending recession and how the economy is going to gloom. Most of our stock portfolios are destroyed. But let me also bring some perspective to the hiring market today. Disney parks had their busiest weekend last week. United had the highest ever inquiries for booking.
Wow.
For every candidate looking for a job, there are still 2 open positions at a small business that aren't being able to be filled. We are nowhere close to a normal job market. We're nowhere close to where we used to. Consumers are still spending. Consumers are still going to resorts, they're going to retail stores, they're going to restaurants. And thus the labor pool that we're looking for FedEx Contractor are still competing with these other industries, which don't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. And so please be aware that the recruiting market is still as tough as it used to. Finding a good candidate is still as difficult. And just keep that in perspective.
Yep. And also, I mean, I know, Shivam, because you're a recruiter, you should be recruiting year round. And I know that because I was a contractor, and I know that the hiring when I was in business never stopped, because even when you think you're sitting comfortably, somebody gets hurt, vacations are coming up. You got 2 people off for vacation, and now COVID hits. And now I have people who are telling me they were exposed. They think they're exposed. We're still not out of this whole COVID thing. And it's summertime, people want vacations. And then you turn right around and we're right in the middle of peak. So, or the beginning of peak, when every other contractor across the country and UPS and Amazon, everybody in our industry is trying to staff up. And let me read you this question from anonymous attendee. How do you look at Uber driving / Uber Eats? Uber Eats held more weight since I know they were getting in and out of the car. I was desperate last week. So
as per FedEx's standards, and let me talk about the bare minimum and let me talk about my experience. So as per FedEx, anyone driving for work, that includes Uber and Uber Eats, counts as commercial driving, and thus it goes towards their qualifications. That being said, majority of the Uber or Uber Eats drivers do that part-time. The gig economy workers, basically DoorDash, Uber Eats, do that part-time. And it is almost impossible to generalize. So I understand what the question says, that Uber Eats, you get off, but you're getting off on average 14 times a day. A FedEx driver has to get off 100, 120 times. They have to climb the back of their truck, pick up a heavy 150-pound package, jump 3 feet down. I've done that. I've delivered packages. My knees were swollen, and I think I was fit. So that being said, like I said, the resumes don't matter. Their fitness could vary a lot, even if he's an Uber Eats or Uber driver. We definitely don't dismiss anyone who's got commercial driving. That includes DoorDash, Postmates, Uber, Lyft. But we obviously screen them through an additional layer where we A, have to educate them as what the job is. B, we have to make sure that they're fit enough for the job. And that's why the road test is that important. While yes, you have to test whether he can drive a 16-foot truck, you also have to expose him to a FedEx ecosystem. You have to show him the packages that he's going to be handling, and you have to size him up in terms of his fitness and his alertness. Yeah,
because that's really your first facial, face-to-face interaction with that candidate. So that is very important. That's very important. Trying to think. What else you got for me, Shivam?
I think, if I was to sum the whole, all the lessons I've learned. I'm sorry, we've got one last question. So if they pass road tests and they don't seem fit. So I understand the discrimination laws, and we've been hit by a couple, by people looking to make a fast payday. So every state is different. I'm not an attorney. I don't want to speak to the laws specifically. But when someone comes for a job, it is the owners. So discrimination is if you screen them out, saying if you are 150 pounds, you can't apply for this job.
Right.
Or if your BMI is above a certain level, you can't apply. That is discrimination if you do not give them the opportunity to interview.
Right.
But however, if you interview them and you determine that they're not the best fit, and fitness could be a reason, it could be their attitude, it could be their experience, it could be X number of criteria which you don't need to disclose to anyone.
Right.
That is not discrimination. That is just the selection process. So it is discrimination if you create a barrier for someone to apply. But if you have certain filters in terms of your hiring, and which are completely logical based on the job that they're applying for,
right,
that is not discrimination in my understanding. And we've been hit by enough discrimination cases to now I have a certain degree of confidence in what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I like that. And I think people should be cautious, not discriminatory, but cautious, because if you put someone that is not going to be physically able to do this job and you put them out there in the truck, you're going to turn around and you're going to end up having a workers' comp claim.
Yeah,
that's what it all.
I hear that a lot.
Happen. Yeah. So be smart.
And it's true. And it's true. And that's another reason why I say the offer letter should come after the road test, because your offer letter is contingent on on a drug test or on a background check, but it cannot be contingent on their fitness.
Yeah.
Once you met them, and if you're confident that you want to go ahead with them, you give them the offer letter and get them to do the last steps. If you don't want to go ahead with them, or you want to think about it, just to tell them you'll get back to them. Right. And if you find somebody else, you can just let them know that the position is closed.
Right. And depending on the level of unfitness, You know, with peak coming, you could always use them as a jumper. You know, put them in an LP route with another body. You know, there's a lot of ways that, you know, if they check off every other box except the fitness, there might be a place for them in your organization. You never know.
And you're right, Pam. And just to kind of just address that, fitness is very arbitrary. Someone's weight does not mean they're unfit, and someone being lean doesn't mean they're fit.
That's true.
So again, I've seen that. We've all seen that. You know, we all have enough experiences with that. So I feel a contractor or a hiring manager who's on the ground, meeting them face to face, is the best judge for someone's fitness.
Agreed.
But absolutely.
Agreed.
But yeah, you know, to sum it up, and I know we're running out of time, the only thing I tell every FedEx contractor that we work with is never stop hiring. I know that's self-serving. I know that's salesy. You might not be using us for hiring. You might be doing it yourself, but never stop hiring, even if you don't need people. You know, a lot of people say that, the best time to be recruiting is when you don't need to recruit. You know, use that as a tool to enforce culture. Use that as a tool to, eliminate the bottom 10% of your workforce. Use that as a tool to, bring more efficient, more productive, more disciplined team. Use that as a tool to attack contingency operations.
Yeah.
But always have a pipeline of candidates, even when you don't need them, because with attrition the way that it is in this industry, you never know when you need them. If you've got more than 12, 13 people, you will be good to be able to hire one person every month at the very minimum. And that's all the wisdom I can share. Kind of gets just summarized to that one line: never stop hiring.
That's a lot of wisdom right there. That's great. And I think that advice is worth its weight in gold for contractors, whether you're a veteran contractor or a newer contractor, whether you think you have enough bodies to cover your 7-day operation, you should never stop hiring. Ever, ever, ever. Because like you said earlier in the webinar, contingency can be very lucrative, but they're not going to give you contingency if you can't handle your own CSA.
Absolutely.
So anybody have any more questions? If you do, you can reach out to us at FXG Recruiting at beans.ai, correct? FXG Recruiting at beans.ai. Shivam, thank you so much for being here. I love doing these webinars with you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We always love bringing you information, especially about recruiting, because we're here to help. Please reach out to us if you need anything. Have a great day and be safe out there. Bye, Shivam.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye, everybody.